The theme of this season for the Washington Commanders is all about survival, and that survival starts by beating the Arizona Cardinals in week 1 of the NFL season. That and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Commanders fans, and welcome to this episode of Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're getting your podcast. And you can continue this conversation with me after the episode by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider at joinsubtext.com/Locked On Commanders. You get your first 2 weeks free. If you like it, you stick around. If you don't, I appreciate you trying it out anyway. Or you can follow me on Twitter at dharrison82. I'm David Harrison, your host, credential member of the media, covering your Washington Commanders for CommanderCountry.com, a part of Sports Illustrated's FanNation. And I'm here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And everydayers, I appreciate you for being the best that NFL football fans have to offer. This crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL or use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Let's get the crossover Thursday festivities going, and let's bring in Alex Clancy, host of Locked On Cardinals. All right, guys, crossover Thursday, first crossover Thursday of the 2023 regular season. Alex Clancy representing Locked On Cardinals. On Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Of course, I'm David Harrison representing Locked On Commanders, and we're here to tell you everything you need to know about this upcoming matchup. Alex, football is all the way back, and my question for you is, are Cardinals fans excited? Because I know there's not a lot of expectation out there in the desert.
I'm excited. I think Cardinals fans, so the thing is, David Harrison, excitement has a loose definition. Metrics for success now have a loose temporary definition for the Cardinals. So it's kind of like this malleable thing where it's like, we're just going to kind of adjust and kind of see what people are happy about, what they're content with, what the downsides are, what the shortcomings are for a team that's not going to win for many games this year. But excitement wise, Steve Keim and Cliff Kingsbury are gone. And now it's just excitement of the unknown. The draft seemed to go pretty well in some very important positions with Paris Johnson, B.J. Ojulari, Garrett Williams, Michael Wilson, who's been the star of camp, the wide receiver out of Stanford. There's excitement because we don't know what the restrictor play that used to hold this roster will do when the restrictor play is no longer here. So it's exciting. It's scary. It's kind of like it could be scariest environment imaginable, but it could be the beginning of something great for the Cardinals now that that said restrictor plate is gone with Steve Keim being gone. Yeah,
I mean, it almost sounds like a true discovery trip, right? Like, we're gonna go out here into the wilderness, and we don't know what's gonna happen at the end of mid-January, but what we know is by the time we get to mid-January, we're gonna know who we are, and to a certain extent, that's a win, right? Because then you can formulate a strategy moving forward. I don't hate the approach to the season. I think a lot of teams, a lot of hosts who cover teams that are considered to be towards the bottom of the league could probably learn a lot from that approach. I like that. So what is the biggest storyline, though, coming from the Arizona Cardinals side of this as you approach week 1? What is the biggest thing that is happening around your team?
Where are the stars on this roster? And it's not like that's not a hypothetical question. Like, the biggest thing the Cardinals need to do starting on Sunday is find players that will save them high draft capital in 2024. Like, if B.J. Ojulari balls out, he's a pass rusher, he's in coverage, he's a run stopper, whatever it is, cool. Box checked. Paris Johnson Jr., left tackle or right tackle for the foreseeable, and then for the future left tackle, check. Michael Wilson, bona fide wide receiver 1A, check. Garrett Williams, who probably could have gone in the first round or high second if he didn't get injured last season, if he's a CB1, check. Like, that's what starting Sunday is as one chapter with 18 different books in it, or 17 different books in it for 2023. But that's the biggest story, is a collection of who is going to make plays for this team, because rookies, there is zero pressure to perform win-loss record, but there's all the pressure to perform in, you want a spot, everybody's got an opportunity to get a spot and keep a spot, and it starts on Sunday. So it sounds generic, but it's not player specific. It's all 53 specific on Sunday.
But it speaks to the journey we just talked about, right? The way you just described before, of finding out who these Cardinals are, so that you know where to go from there. I mean, and it makes total sense. And going up against an Eric Bieniemy offense that's going to be expected to be super creative, going up against arguably one of the better defenses in the NFL, certainly expect to be top 10, hoping for top 8, top 5. Would love best in the league. Obviously, I think they would be certainly happy with that billing. But certainly a good, early, whatever kind of test you want to call it, an early example of what kind of talent you have, and then just start the resiliency test from there. And you're going up against, on the other side, the story is not a story of discovery; it's a story of survival, right? Like this Washington Commanders team is in the thick of the wilderness already, and really has been, thanks to the former owner who is no longer here. But the former owner left them in the middle of a mess that now the new ownership group has to come in and try to untangle. And everybody who's involved in it is just hoping that they're going to be there when the light at the end of the tunnel is reached. And of course, we're talking about Ron Rivera. We're talking about the entire coaching staff, from Eric Bieniemy, Jack Del Rio, even quarterback Sam Howell, who a lot of people look at and say, if Sam Howell can't pan out or doesn't pan out this year and prove that he can be a serviceable or worthwhile quarterback, then next year, when this coaching staff is gone, when the general manager, in name only, Martin Mayhew, is gone, that most likely the quarterback is going to be gone with them. So as exciting as this new start has been for the Washington Commanders, this week 1 matchup is also the beginning of a survival story. Is this organization going to maintain where it's been so far? And that's going to start, obviously, with Sam Howell's got to go out there and execute an Eric Bieniemy offense. Alex, let me ask you this about the Washington Commanders. So that's the biggest story. But what I'm really curious about is, have you been on the side of this conversation of, I can't believe the Commanders are starting a 5th-round quarterback? Or are you on the side of this conversation of, I can't believe Sam Howell was a 5th-round quarterback to begin with?
Probably a little bit more of the latter. But here's the thing, David, and it's changed a little bit because quarterbacks are sometimes much more ready to play out of college than they used to be. It used to be you sit for a year, maybe 2, then you play, you hold a clipboard, you learn from a veteran, or whatever it may be. Now, like, the elixir for potentially quicker success for quarterbacks is a good offensive line, a good defense, and like 2 position players that you can trust to throw the ball to. Usually it's a tight end and a running back, but with Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel, like, it's weird over there. With Eric Bieniemy, you have no idea what the hell it's going to look like, but you've got an average offensive line to a bit above average. You've got one of the best defensive fronts in football, and you've got guys like Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin and Logan Thomas, and a couple running backs where it's like, he can Brock Purdy this. And I know I hate that phrase, but it's lazy. But like, Sam Howell was a stud. Like, it's not his fault he had 2 stud running backs in college. Like, he's shown flashes of, if this translates, this dude could ball out and be an absolute steal. I don't see him as a Sam Howell 5th-round quarterback, a 5th-round pick. I see him as a quarterback who has everything set up for him to succeed, and he just needs to go do it. I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fair. That's kind of what we've been talking about here. Honestly, in the DMV is, for years now, we've been saying about this Commanders team, even before the arrival of Jahan Dotson, Brian Robinson, guys like that if this team had average or better quarterback play, which is Brock Purdy, right, then they're a playoff team. And when we said that through Ryan Fitzpatrick, Taylor Heineke, Carson Wentz, and now once again, everybody around here is saying the same thing. But it looks like we have a quarterback in Sam Howell who actually might give this team average or better quarterback play. So how he does against this Arizona Cardinals defense, obviously going to be one of the key matchups. How whoever the starting quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals is, which I don't know if by the time we're recording this, they've actually officially announced it, is also going to have a very tough matchup against the Washington Commanders defense. But what other key matchups are going to dictate the pace of this game? We will tell you that coming up next on this crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Cardinals and Locked On Commanders. And we're going to do that thanks to our friends and our title sponsors for this crossover Thursday episode, Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than 2 to 6 players worth of statistical projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. Testing my skills on Prize Picks this football season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. If you don't have the skills the way that I do or don't, you can turn $100 into $0 and then wait till the next season to reload and hope that you've learned some lessons. This week on Prize Picks, I'm going Justin Jefferson less than 100 yards. I said that to Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. He laughed, so I'm not very confident in that choice anymore. And I'm also going Lamar Jackson for more than one passing touchdown with his new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, over there, bringing that Georgia system with him. Prize Picks offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to give you even more value. And Prize Picks now offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy with Prize Picks. All right, guys, back here now to continue this crossover Thursday episode. Locked On Commanders, Locked On Cardinals, talking about Week 1, Arizona Cardinals visiting the Washington Commanders in a sold-out FedEx Field. Alex Clancy, I don't know if sold-out FedEx Field was ever a thing I thought would happen unless it was sold out by Cowboys fans or Eagles fans coming to see their favorite team play the Commanders. But it's happening. Excitement is all around, and that excitement is going to drop to zero if the Washington Commanders lose to the Arizona Cardinals. So in your eyes, what are the key matchups or the key matchup for the Arizona Cardinals to get a win out of the DMV?
The front seven versus the offensive line. I think that's the only that's the only real matchup the Cardinals can come to the table with and potentially hold their own. And I don't say that as like a doomsday scenario, but they neglected the cornerback room this offseason because you can't do everything in one offseason. And all the Washington Commanders have are fun, young wide receivers. Just fun. And not the same kind of wide receiver, all of the different kinds of wide receiver. So that's kind of a fool's errand to say, oh, Terry McLaurin versus Marco Wilson. It's not something they can bring to the table yet, and that's okay. I think that Paris Johnson Jr., DJ Humphries, Will Hernandez brought back to play on the right side interior. We'll see what this offensive line will be against one of the best front sevens in football. Chase Young in a contract year. Like I said in the offseason, just a little aside, the Cardinals should trade a second and a fourth, a third and a fourth, whatever it is. See what the price tag would be to trade for Chase Young, because apparently he's fallen out of favor because he hasn't produced like he did his first year before getting injured. But he's still a large, smart, very strong human being who is exemplary at his craft. To go with Daron Payne and Montez Sweat and just continue the names, that's the one. If the Cardinals can hold their run, not only will it say a lot about them, but it's going to put so much into question in Washington land, which is just fun because it's not the Cardinals. Do I see that being a fair fight? Not necessarily, but that's the key matchup for the Cardinals, especially Paris Johnson Jr., rookie offensive tackle, playing against Montez Sweat or Chase Young, depending on where he lines up on the offensive line.
Yeah, for the most part, it's going to be Montez Sweat, and Montez Sweat would love nothing more than to tell Chase Young about how much he's punishing this young Ohio State offensive tackle. Like the game within the game. Montez Sweat and Chase Young, for those who don't know, are basically best friends, if not total best friends. So Montez would love to give his Ohio State best friend a lot of fun comments about dominating that Ohio State youngster on the other side of the offensive line. But yeah, that's absolutely, I mean, obviously, Daniel Jeremiah, Bucky Brooks, I love those guys. And they're the first ones I heard say it. They may not be the originators, but it's really hard to be a bad football team if you're good in the trenches. And for the Washington Commanders in this matchup, if their defensive line can do damage against Arizona Cardinals offensive line, like you said, 100%, that's going to be one of the keys to the game. And you're talking about a very hungry unit. You already mentioned Montez and Chase, but Daron Payne just got paid. He is looking to show people that just because I got paid does not mean that we're on easy street. No, he's coming out here to win games. I asked him, I want to make sure this is said clearly, I asked him if he's shooting for 15.5 sacks this year. He said, you know it. That's not Daron Payne predicting 15.5 sacks. That's me, random media dude, asking him if that's a goal of his, and his just smiling and being nice and agreeing with it. So let's be clear here. But the bottom line is Daron Payne is on a mission to make sure that everybody understands that not only did he earn his paycheck, but he's going to keep earning his paycheck. So that's a huge one. For the Washington Commanders side of things, I'm looking at first-round rookie, first-round pick cornerback Emmanuel Forbes, specifically against Marquise Brown. And look, the Commanders aren't going to travel their corners, so a lot of it's going to determine or be based off of how often do the Arizona Cardinals put Marquise Brown up against Emmanuel Forbes. So it's not going to be a snap-in, snap-out basis. And honestly, if I'm the Arizona Cardinals, I'm trying to get Marquise on Kendall Fuller, not because Kendall is a bad corner, but because Kendall doesn't have the wheels that Marquise Brown has. So I know that the Commanders have to provide him help. So that automatically takes two defenders out of the picture.
Mhm.
But when Marquise Brown is on Emmanuel Forbes, I'm curious to see if Joshua Dobbs, Clayton Tune, whoever is at quarterback, is willing to test that matchup. This is a rookie that was brought in from Mississippi State over Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon, to a lot of people's dismay. Trust me, the Commanders media room was just as responsive as social media was when that pick came through, and it was not Christian Gonzalez. But when you look at why, it's the takeaways. It's the record-setting pick sixes, and what the Commanders defense was missing last year more than anything was takeaways. They had a lot of stops, forced a lot of field goals, but they did not take the ball away, and that's what they're looking to do with Emmanuel Forbes and, honestly, Quan Martin, their rookie safety, defensive back out of Illinois. But how Emmanuel Forbes helps combat a team that has a guy like Marquise Brown is going to directly translate in the division when you got Brandon Cooks, you got Devontae Smith coming down the pike, and I don't know who the New York Giants are going to run out on the field, but somebody. So I'm really interested to see how Emmanuel does this first week. So Alex, how do you feel Marquise Brown could potentially do against a rookie corner making his first start?
Contract year, another guy, Marquise Brown, like it's good. By all accounts, it's going to be Joshua Dobbs. Ian Rappaport reported that yesterday. It's loose. Jonathan Gannon's keeping it tight to the vest. It doesn't really matter. Like, I still think it should be Clayton Tune, but we can talk about that. Like, this is solely going to be predicated upon game scheme for Drew Petzing, new offensive coordinator for the Cardinals. And what Drew has been grown accustomed to is lackluster quarterback play when he was in Cleveland. I mean, Jacoby Brissett was fine. Obviously, now with the Washington Commanders, he was fine. They won more games than they should have probably with him starting, but it's going to look a lot like the same. I mean, he'll probably get 5-7 targets. They got to get creative with him. Of Josh Dobbs, he's less than a month into this offense. So even though he had the same offense with Drew Petzing in Cleveland, how they're going to use Hollywood Brown is, you tell me. Like, I don't know. Like, is he a wide receiver one? Are they going to gun him down the sidelines because that's what he's good at? Are they going to move him into the slot and use him sneakily? Like with Hollywood Brown, he's been such a mystery because we only saw 6 games of him a year ago with Kyler Murray. So what he's going to do with somebody that's not named Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray, it's TBD. But this is where he could earn his money early in the season before Kyler Murray to show his value. So you'll bet your rear end that he's going to find ways to get the ball. How he does it, I have no idea. If it's against a rookie corner, chances are it'll be more beneficial for him. If not, we saw a lot of video where he wasn't getting great separation during joint practices, especially in Minnesota. So if he falls flat early on this season, it could be walking papers for him, come next season. So that was more of a long-winded answer, but I think I answered that plus 100 other questions.
Yeah, no, it was good stuff, though. And I think, you know what? Look, Marvin Harrison Jr., I mean, Cardinals fans, just hope Marvin Harrison Jr. stays healthy. You know what I mean? He went down a little bit in Ohio State's first game. Let's see less of that. Let's see Marvin Harrison Jr. up on his feet, because then maybe he can come into Arizona next year. I think that's one of the predominant mock draft, way too early mock draft picks, but I think that's an easy one to make, right? I think next April, if you're in the position, that's a pretty easy one to make, whether it's Clayton Tune or someone else. For the record, I don't know why you want Clayton Tune over Dobbs, but personally, I think especially if the Cardinals are on a mission to find out who they are for the future, starting Clayton Tune makes more sense for that type of mission than starting Joshua Dobbs. And I actually like Clayton Tune a lot coming out in this draft. So on the other side of everything, obviously, we've got the matchups, when we've got the players within some of those matchups, whether it be that offensive line versus defensive line, receivers versus corners. Alex, who is the the player for Arizona that you're watching in this game?
Zaven Collins. Moved to the edge. He will be rushing the passer, something the Cardinals desperately need, and he'll be dropping back in the coverage a little bit as well. With Isaiah Simmons gone, moved to inside linebacker, now moved to the New York Giants. Coming out of Tulsa, Zaven Collins wasn't an inside linebacker. He wasn't an off-ball linebacker. They're finally potentially moving him to a spot where he can absolutely thrive and take that year 3 step in a position they desperately need against a quarterback who started one game in his career and one that didn't really matter. This is really a test for the Cardinals pass rush as a whole, hopefully led by Zaven Collins, that you got a guy who's never played in the NFL before in a meaningful game. Go get him. And we'll see if that's something that they could do. Will it happen? I don't. A lot of my questions, Dave, are going to be, I don't know. But that's
you know what?
looking at the most on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. I actually empathize with you. So Cardinals fans likely don't know this, but I also co-host Locked On Bucks on this network. And a lot of my answers about the Buccaneers on my crossover with Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings were, I don't know. We're going to find out starting in week 1, because there's a lot of question marks on that roster. So believe me, I feel it. I think weirdly, there might be a little bit more optimism for the future around the Cardinals roster than the Bucks roster, but that's a totally different conversation for a different crossover episode someday. Zaven Collins is a guy that, Alex, I can promise you, his name is going to be dropped to Eric Bieniemy in our coordinator press conference coming up this week, because every media member, I think, in Washington has dropped Zaven Collins' name at some point in time. So he's definitely a guy that we're obviously keeping an eye on as well. The key player, I'm going to cheat a little bit. So the key player for me is not a guy that's going to be on the field. You actually already kind of touched on it, Jacoby Brissett, because this Arizona Cardinals team's coming in with a new head coach, new coaching staff, new quarterback, a lot of new pieces, a lot of, like you said, question marks. Well, we've asked Sam Howell, we've asked Ron Rivera if it's difficult to prepare for a team in this circumstance, and they've kind of acknowledged it. But they've also leaned on, as you'd expect, going back to where they came from, whether that's Philly's defense, which obviously Washington's very familiar with, or Cleveland's offense. Well, who knows Cleveland's offense that's not in Cleveland anymore better than Jacoby Brissett? Jacoby Brissett, nobody, right? So I think Jacoby Brissett, we're not going to get to see it necessarily, but I know that I plan on asking after the game, because they're not going to tip their hand before the game, but I plan on asking Jacoby specifically, or Sam potentially as well, how instrumental Jacoby Brissett was in preparing the Washington Commanders for what they hope is going to be their first win of the 2023 NFL season. Is that how this game is going to turn out, though? Will the Washington Commanders get their first win, or will the Arizona Cardinals get their first upset of the game? We will tell you that coming up next on this crossover episode of Locked On Cardinals, Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we'll do that thanks to our friends over at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. The Arizona Cardinals know that feeling, except it's not a small business. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. But you, if you own a small business, want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Once you post your job, add your job and your purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring, and then use their simple tools like screening questions that make it easy for you to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Locked On Cardinals, Locked On Commanders here for Crossover Thursday, wrapping up this episode pre-week 1. Again, Arizona will be in Washington to face the upstart Washington Commanders. I don't know if that's the right way to put that, but that could be a way to put it. Alex, according to our good buddies over at FanDuel, the Washington Commanders are a full touchdown and Joey Sly extra point favorites over the Arizona Cardinals. Is there a way, and if so, what is it, that the Arizona Cardinals beat that spread and beat the Commanders?
I mean, the easy answer is get to Sam Howell. I mean, that's the answer. If you can rumble him in his kitchen and make him make mistakes, the best friend of an inferior cornerback room is a good pass rush. And if they can get to him, force a couple turnovers, they have to win a turnover battle while not turning the ball over. But getting to Sam Howell, strip sacks, interceptions, 3rd and 25s, that's how it's going to happen. They have to cut the head off the snake. And because if they're dropping into coverage, they're dead. If they're not getting to the quarterback, they're dead. They can't stop anybody right now. And again, I tell Cardinals fans all the time, this is a 2-year rebuild. This is not knocking a position group. They went and addressed a lot of the needs. Steve Keim is like the friend you had growing up who would come over, play with your toys, and then leave without helping you clean them up. That's what the Arizona Cardinals organization is now. It's going to take 2 off seasons. So getting to the quarterback is number 1. That's how they can come out on Sunday with a victory and then be opportunistic once getting the ball back after turnover and see what the offense can do. But I think that's really the main way that they can get it done.
Yeah, I love that analogy, man. I love that analogy. That's such a spot on analogy. Yeah, so I mean, any given Sunday, right? So you obviously don't go into a matchup, and look, we out here, like in the media circles, fans, we can get it as audacious as we want or as braggadocious as we want, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really impact things as long as the players are keeping an even keel and the coaches are as well. And to a man, so far in the Commanders' locker room and coaching staff, none of them are taking the Cardinals for granted. And when you watch them out there at practice, this is not an off week. This is not an early bye week. This is actually absolutely game week. For week 1 of the NFL season. So I don't expect the Washington Commanders to come in sleeping on the Arizona Cardinals at all. And that includes quarterback Sam Howell, who is absolutely, I think, the key to the Arizona Cardinals winning this game is rattling him. The key to the Washington Commanders not losing this game is Sam Howell containing the nerves, containing the pressure, because let's be real, week 18 start against the Dallas Cowboys when your team is eliminated from the playoffs. Yes, there's some pressure. You're a rookie. It's your first NFL start, of course, but that's where the pressure ends. Like once the ball is kicked off, the pressure is now gone. You're just playing football and there's nothing on the line. But now everything is on the line. Again, this is a team out for survival. Their head coach is trying to save his job. Their team president, their quarterback is part of that. Everybody's trying to keep their jobs after this season, and it starts in week 1. Sam Howell has shown himself to be a very smart, even-leveled quarterback. Doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, can throw a bad pass, come back, and throw another one on the dart on a line. We saw that during the preseason, took a really bad sack that he absolutely owned up to. Forced a 3rd and 13, came back and hit a 15-yard pass on the very next play to pick up that first down. That is the Sam Howell that the Washington Commanders have to see, because this type of a matchup looks like, as long as you don't do something to give the Arizona Cardinals life, to give the Arizona Cardinals more underdog energy, because that's what they're going to be feeding on, is that underdog energy. As long as you don't do anything to feed that gremlin, you should be okay and come out with the first week win of the season. And again, that's not shade to the Arizona Cardinals. They're just in a franchise that's in a certain situation, and it just kind of is what it is. But again, looking for some positives wherever you can find them. Alex, so I think my prediction. I've got the Washington Commanders winning this thing, and I'm going to go 24-17, even though this Commanders defense is going to be very upset if they give up 17 points to Joshua Dobbs or Clayton Tune. But I'm going to go 24-17 just because it's the NFL, and those are NFL players over there too.
Yep. I'm going to say Washington 30-13. It's stuck. That's the number that's stuck. I mean, the Cardinals may get a garbage time touchdown, may get a first drive touchdown. It's week 1. Nobody knows, nobody has their sea legs yet. Nobody, especially defenses either come out and they stink, or they come out and they're the locked in state and the offense isn't. So the chance that all 53 players, all 22 starters, whatever it may be, are all in sync in week 1 for either side is pretty far-fetched to think. So yeah, I'm saying 30-13.
So make sure you guys come back. Locked On Cardinals, Locked On Commanders. We've got at least one more episode dropping before the kickoff, and then of course during the game. Follow us both on Twitter at Clancy's Corner for Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals, and at DHarrison82 for myself of Locked On Commanders. Enjoy the game, no matter how you're enjoying it, where you're enjoying it. As always, thank you for making Locked On Cardinals, Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every dares for both shows. We appreciate all of you for being the best football fans out there. Thanks so much for making us a part of your day, part of your routine. Until we speak again, please be safe, be kind, and we will both see you next time for Locked On Cardinals, Locked On Commanders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.